33 years ago, on a stormy summer night in Atlanta, a single mistake changed the fate of 3 lives forever. One child was born. Another child came into the world almost at the same time, and a mother believed with all her heart that her baby boy was everything to her. But hidden in those old, yellowing hospital records was one small detail line reading simply "baby boy" that decided a destiny no one could have imagined, setting in motion a tragedy that would stretch on for more than 3 decades. That late afternoon, the Atlanta sky had turned an ominous black, heavy with the promise of an approaching storm. In a small yellow house at the end of Franklin Street, Denise Carter, 59, had just turned off the stove when 3 sharp knocks rang out at the door, urgent but measured, as if someone had been waiting for this moment a very long time. Denise opened the door to find a woman in her early 30s standing on the porch, long black hair cascading in soft waves, eyes steady and unwavering. Rain began tapping lightly on the porch roof as the young woman spoke softly. "Mrs. Carter M. Jasmine Hill. I've been looking for you for a long time." Jasmine pulled a white envelope from her coat pocket and slid it into Denise's trembling hands. Her voice shook, but each word was clear. "I only ask one thing. Please read this, and please believe me." Denise stood frozen on the doorstep as Jasmine turned away, hurrying to a car parked beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, as the engine rumbled to life and pulled away. Denise slowly opened the envelope, revealing the insignia of a DNA testing lab and a bold headline, "Maternity Test Results." Rain began falling harder, splashing against Denise's worn fabric slippers. In that instant, a cold certainty swept over her. Everything she had believed for the past 33 years was about to come crashing down. Denise Carter was born in 1964 and grew up in southwest Atlanta, a neighborhood where generations of African-American families had built strong, unbreakable bonds, though the brick walls of her street were old and peeling. Every weekend, the place lit up with backyard barbecues and the laughter of families gathered together. Denise was the third of 4 sisters, and she watched her mother, Lula, juggle countless jobs just to keep their family afloat. Raised in hardship, Denise took to heart a single, unwavering belief. Family is everything. You protect it at all costs. After high school, college wasn't an option. Denise couldn't afford it. Instead, she enrolled in a short training program at the community center and began working as an in-home healthcare aide. By day, she cared for elderly patients. By night, she scrubbed floors at a small medical clinic. Denise never complained, knowing every hard-earned dollar went toward building a safe home for herself and her precious baby boy. The stormy night in 1990 changed everything. Denise went into labor alone in her small apartment as the summer storm raged outside. When a neighbor realized what was happening, they called an ambulance. She was rushed to Hawthorne Memorial Hospital with sirens wailing, rain slamming against the ambulance windows. In that chaotic night, she gave birth, and when she awoke, a newborn wrapped in a pink blanket lay by her side as the nurse beamed. "Congratulations. It's a healthy baby boy," exhausted and overwhelmed. Denise poured every ounce of her love into the tiny child before her, never doubting for a moment that he was her son. So began her journey as a single mother, arduous, yet overflowing with fierce, unwavering devotion. Marcus Carter grew up enveloped in his mother's love. He had bright, sparkling dark eyes, an infectious smile, and a warm presence that made everyone adore him. Though his father was absent, Marcus never felt lacking because Denise gave him everything. She had her time, her affection, her very soul. From an early age, he loved watching his mother cook, standing beside the stove as oil sizzled and fragrant spices filled the air. He would giggle gleefully when she let him taste the seasoning, then throw himself into mixing batter with single-minded concentration. Denise was immensely proud of her kind, hard-working son. Marcus wasn't the top student in school, but everyone loved him for his good heart and willingness to help friends. In high school, he took a job at a small diner, carefully saving each paycheck to help his mother cover utility bills. Denise's heart swelled with both pride and worry, fearful her son was taking on too much too soon, but Marcus always reassured her, "I just want you to rest more." "Mom." When Marcus graduated, Denise threw a small party, inviting neighbors to celebrate. Their cramped house rang with laughter, and everyone praised Marcus as a shining example of a mother's unconditional love. Denise beamed, convinced her love was strong enough to fill any father-shaped void together. They dreamed of opening a little restaurant called Mama's Table, where they would serve the family recipes passed down through generations. They never quite had enough money to make it happen, but the dream was their anchor, keeping them hopeful even through the hardest days. Their neighborhood in East Point, a lively, close-knit corner of Atlanta, was a place where kids played tag in alleys until dusk, and barbershops, laundromats, and corner stores owned by black families stood as steadfast pillars of the community for decades. Everyone knew Denise as the fiercely devoted single mother who would drop everything to babysit, care for an ailing neighbor, or cook up a warm meal when someone was in need. Marcus grew up in the embrace of this caring community. The local grocer often slipped him candy, and the bus driver would let him ride for free if Denise was running late. That web of kindness made Marcus fiercely proud of his mother and grateful for every act of generosity, no matter how small. Denise never once felt alone. She had an entire neighborhood standing behind her, which is why, more than anything, she could never have imagined that in this place where it seemed nothing could stay hidden, there lay a terrible truth buried for over 30 years. A truth waiting to burst open with the arrival of a DNA envelope in a rainy storm, threatening to unravel everything she had ever believed. Denise sat in her living room, the white envelope before her like a stone crushing her chest. The ticking clock echoed through the silent house, broken only by the steady patter of rain outside. She was terrified that opening this envelope would shatter everything she'd believed for the past 33 years. As midnight crept in, she forced herself to tear the seal. Under the warm yellow glow of the lamp, the paper inside emerged, bearing the Gen Match Labs logo and the bold headline, Maternity DNA Test Results. Denise's eyes scanned the genetic markers, her heart pounding louder with every word. Then she reached the bolded conclusion maternity match with Jasmine Hill 99.99%. Her mouth fell open, her hands trembled violently, and the envelope slipped from her grasp, fluttering to the floor. Memories from 3 decades came crashing down at once. Marcus's laughter, their cozy Sunday dinners, the day he first called her mama. Denise whispered hoarsely, "No, no, this can't be." But the evidence was undeniable. Jasmine, the woman who'd appeared at her door, was her biological daughter. Denise collapsed into the chair, her mind spiraling back to the night of August 18, 1990. A Category 3 storm had torn through Atlanta, lightning ripping the sky apart. Inside Hawthorne Memorial Hospital, pitch black from a power outage. Nurses rushed through darkened halls. Doctors shouted commands under flickering flashlights. Denise had labored in agony, slipping into unconsciousness from exhaustion after giving birth. In the brief moments she stirred, she barely heard someone yell, "Healthy baby boy, mother and child are fine," by the time she fully awoke. A young nurse handed her a baby swaddled in a pink blanket, saying, "Here's your baby boy." For 33 years, Denise believed with all her heart that Marcus was her son. She'd kept his original birth certificate, noticing long ago how the sex mail entry was written in different, shaky handwriting. She'd assumed it was a clerical error during the blackout. But now, she realized that tiny mistake had set a tragedy in motion. The words of Sheila, the nurse on duty that night, rang in her ears that night. 2 mothers delivered almost at the same time. One had a girl, the other a boy. In the chaos, handwritten name tags were mixed up, and hospital records got altered, frantically. Denise dug through her old documents, finding the birth assignment sheet. Along the faded edge, a smudged pencil note surfaced: Baby Hill, Baby Carter, born 10 minutes apart. Power outage 3:35:45. The words confirmed Denise's deepest fears. Her heart pounded as she dialed Sheila, voice shaking. "Do you remember what happened that night?" Sheila sighed heavily on the other end. Her voice weighted with years of regret. "I remember every detail. The storm had the hospital in total disarray. You and Loretta Hill were brought in at nearly the same time. One gave birth to a girl. the other to a boy, but records were mismatched, name tags were scribbled incorrectly, and everything turned into a chaotic mess. I can't say for sure the babies were given to the right mothers. Denise froze. In an instant, she understood if Marcus wasn't her biological son. Then Jasmine the woman, standing in the rain at her door, was the baby girl meant to be in her arms all those years ago. A searing pain coursed through her as she grasped the full weight of it for 33 years. Both children had grown up in families that were never truly theirs, all because of one fateful mistake on a storm-racked night. Denise barely slept that night. One question kept replaying in her mind. If Marcus isn't my biological child, then who is he? And where is the baby girl I gave birth to? Each time she remembered Marcus's smile, her heart felt like it was being crushed. She sifted through memories Marcus' first steps, the days they spent cooking together in their tiny kitchen, the 18th birthday party where she'd baked his favorite cake, every cherished moment now cut deeper, as she feared it had all been built on a mistake she never knew existed. The next day, Denise couldn't focus on anything. She made coffee but forgot it on the counter and spent hours staring at the family photos on the walls, each picture stabbed at her with the same terrifying thought. If Marcus learns the truth, will he still see me as his mother? Meanwhile, Marcus went about his day, unaware that his mother's world was shattering, finally, unable to bear the weight alone. Denise called Jasmine, her voice hoarse. I need to see you. They agreed to meet at a cafe by Oakland Park Lake, a quiet spot where only a few elderly folks walked their dogs in the early morning mist. When Jasmine arrived, her eyes held the same fierce, fragile look they'd carried the night she'd come to Denise's door. They sat across from each other, coffee cooling untouched between them as silence stretched on. Jasmine finally began. My adoptive mother, Loretta, passed away last year, before she died. She left a letter apologizing, saying I might not be her child. I took a DNA test with her relatives, but it didn't match. I hired a company to help trace my real family, and your name came up. Denise's hands tightened around her cup, voice cracking. How long have you suspected? Jasmine's eyes glistened. Since I was little, I never looked like Mama Loretta. My skin was darker, my hair curlier, but I was too afraid to ask because I loved her and didn't want to lose her. Hearing this, Denise saw Jasmine not as a stranger, but as the daughter she'd unknowingly lost to the chaos of that stormy night. Her eyes softened, seeing in Jasmine's face the echoes of the baby girl she'd been robbed of so long ago. After the meeting, Denise knew she couldn't hide the truth from Marcus any longer. That evening, when Marcus returned home from work, she trembled as she said, "Son, we need to talk." They sat together in the living room, golden lamplight falling on the family photos lining the walls. Denise shared everything: the DNA test, Nurse Sheila's words, the mix-up revealed by Jasmine. The room fell utterly silent, broken only by rain tapping against the window. Marcus stared at her, pale and unblinking. Denise choked out, "I'm so sorry. I never doubted you were my son until Jasmine showed up." Marcus shot to his feet, his voice shaking with disbelief. "How long have you known? Who am I?" "Mom." "Was I never really yours?" Denise sobbed, reaching for him. "You are my son, no matter what any DNA says." But Marcus stepped back, his eyes a storm of confusion and hurt. "I need time," he whispered, then grabbed his coat and fled, leaving Denise collapsed on the floor, racked with helpless tears. She sat by the door all night, praying for Marcus to return. Near dawn, he walked back in, exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. They stared at each other for a long moment, words unnecessary. Marcus sank down beside her, taking her hand. "You might not be my birth mother, but you raised me for 33 years. I don't want to lose you," he whispered. Denise broke down, clutching him as relief and love flooded through her. Marcus murmured, "We need to find the truth. We have to find your real child." Denise nodded, knowing their journey was far from over, but now she wasn't alone. By her side was the son she had raised with every ounce of love in her heart. Together, they promised to meet Jasmine again, determined to piece together the family torn apart by one fateful stormy night. After Marcus and Denise resolved to seek the truth, they arranged to meet Jasmine at the small cafe by Oakland Park Lake, the same quiet spot where Denise and Jasmine had first spoken that day. Atlanta baked under a scorching sun, a stark contrast to the heavy, suffocating air between the three of them. Denise wore an old, dark floral dress. Marcus, in a crisp white shirt, looked exhausted. Jasmine arrived with her hair tied back, eyes puffy from sleepless nights. They gathered around a tiny table, coffee cups cooling untouched as silence hung over them. Marcus spoke first, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry if I've made this mess even worse, but I need the truth. I need to know who I am, who my real mother is." Jasmine met his gaze, her lips quivering. "We're not enemies. I just want to know where I truly belong. Too, I never wanted to take your mother away from you." Denise sat between them, her heart aching as if it might split apart. Her eyes moved from Marcus to Jasmine, searching desperately for something, anything to hold them together. "We'll find the answers together," she whispered. "No matter what, Marcus, I still love you." The conversation quieted until Jasmine pulled out an old locket containing a photograph of Loretta Hill as a young woman. She slid it across the table to Marcus. "This was my mommy adoptive mother, but she might be your real mother." Marcus picked up the locket, staring at the photo. Loretta's eyes looked hauntingly like his own. The strong nose and square jaw he'd always assumed came from Denise were right there in her face. He looked up at Jasmine, voice cracking. "You, me, we both grew up in families that weren't really ours." Jasmine nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks onto the table. "I always felt different. Mama Loretta loved me, but she was overly protective. Now I see she was afraid the truth would come out." Denise listened, feeling pain and understanding twist together in her chest. She realized Loretta, who had raised Marcus all these years without knowing he wasn't her biological son, must have loved him deeply. Thinking of Loretta now gone, Denise choked out. "She's not here anymore, but we have to honor the love she gave Marcus, to settle every doubt." Marcus suggested they undergo DNA tests together, Denise with Jasmine, Jasmine with Loretta using Loretta's stored hospital samples, and Marcus with Loretta. Jasmine agreed immediately. She needed certainty. 2. Denise hesitated, fear in her eyes, but finally nodded. "We need to end these questions." They went to Atlanta's largest testing center. A nurse collected blood samples from Marcus and Jasmine, recording Loretta's data from Jasmine's old hospital documents. In the waiting room, Denise clutched Marcus' hand, whispering, "No matter what these results say, you're still my son." Marcus lowered his head, tears welling up. "You don't know how scared I've been of losing you." Jasmine watched them, overwhelmed by a longing so fierce it hurt longing to know the kind of bond they shared, if only once in her life. A few days later, the lab called. The results were ready. The three returned together, hearts pounding, in a small consultation room. A staff member handed Denise a sealed envelope. She tore it open with shaking hands, eyes scanning the lines quickly. The first result leapt off the page. Jasmine's DNA matched Denise's with 99.999% certainty, confirming Jasmine was her biological daughter. The next result showed Marcus's DNA matching Loretta's, almost perfectly, proving Marcus was Loretta's biological son. Denise's hands fell limp, the papers sliding from her grasp onto the table. Jasmine burst into tears, throwing her arms around Denise. "Mom, I finally found you." Marcus bowed his head, tears streaking down his cheeks. "Mama Loretta was my birth mother. But Mama Denise, you'll always be my mom." Denise pulled both of them close, her voice thick with emotion. "We're a family. No hospital's mistake can ever change that." Returning home after receiving the DNA results, Marcus was like a ghost drifting through familiar walls. He sank onto the sofa, staring blankly at the house he'd grown up in, each framed photo, every childhood keepsake, each object cut deeper, a sharp reminder that every memory he held dear was built on a truth that was never really his. Denise stood nearby, desperate to reach out and comfort him, but too afraid that any words would only rub salt into the fresh, raw wound. Marcus' voice came out a ragged whisper. I don't know who I am anymore. I thought you were the one thing I could count on. And now I just feel empty. Denise broke down, sobbing. You are not empty. You are my son, no matter what our blood says. You're the child I raised with all the love in my heart. But Marcus couldn't answer. He stood abruptly, bolting out into the rain, leaving Denise collapsing, her trembling hand failing to catch him. He came back long after midnight, soaked and hollow-eyed. Denise leapt up, but stayed a few feet away, unsure if he'd want her touch. Marcus stared at her for what felt like forever, then finally spoke, voice cracking. You might not have given birth to me, but you made me who I am. Denise sobbed, pulling him into a fierce hug. They wept together in silence, rain mingling with their tears until neither knew where one ended and the other began. Marcus sat down at the kitchen table where he and his mother had cooked countless meals. Denise began sharing stories of that stormy night, her excruciating labor, the overwhelming joy of hearing him say mama for the first time. Marcus listened, his tense face softening as the words sank in. In that moment, he understood blood mattered, but the love that had sustained him for 33 years was what had truly raised him. The next morning, Denise, Marcus, and Jasmine gathered again in the cozy kitchen. Denise took Jasmine's hand, voice trembling. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you these 33 years. Jasmine burst into tears, resting her head on Denise's shoulder, her body shaking with quiet sobs. Marcus watched, his heart a storm of emotion. She knew Jasmine deserved her mother's love, but he couldn't shake the fear of losing his place, sensing his turmoil. Denise reached for Marcus, placing his hand gently over Jasmine's. Her voice was steady, resolute. None of us deserves to lose each other. We need to come together like a family. Jasmine looked up, eyes shining with gratitude. Marcus hesitated, then closed his fingers firmly around both their hands in that warm kitchen. The three found the first fragile glimmer of hope since the storm of truth had upended their lives, determined to do right by everyone affected. Denise decided to reach out to Loretta's family, believing they deserved to know that Marcus was truly Loretta's son. Her hands shook as she dialed Loretta's younger sister, her voice wavering but determined as she shared the entire story. There was a long, aching silence on the other end before a quiet voice finally replied, Marcus has already suffered so much, but know this, our family will always welcome him as our own. Marcus overheard the call, silent tears streaming down his cheeks. Denise gently squeezed his hand. I know you need to understand where you come from, and if you choose to meet them, remember no matter what, it'll always be your mom. Marcus leaned into her shoulder, and for the first time in days, a faint smile broke across his face, outside the window. The rain had finally stopped, and sunlight streamed through the clouds, promising a new beginning, even if the road ahead remained uncertain and steep. A few days later, Denise decided to cook a special meal, inviting Marcus and Jasmine to sit down together for the first time as a family. It was their first shared dinner, and Denise wanted it to be meaningful. She made spicy red beans, Marcus' favorite, and crispy fried chicken, the dish Jasmine had complimented on her first visit. The small dining table glowed in soft candlelight, casting warm light over their faces, revealing exhaustion, but also a fragile hope. At first, no one knew how to break the silence. Marcus toyed with his spoon. Jasmine stared into her plate. Denise took a deep breath, raised her teacup, her voice trembling but determined. I can't change the past, but if you both give me the chance, I want to make it up to you. We may not have had the perfect beginning, but we can write a new story together. Marcus lifted his gaze to Jasmine, his eyes still wary, but they softened when he saw tears slipping down her cheek. He gave a small, hesitant nod. Jasmine turned to Denise, voice barely above a whisper. I'd like to call you Mom if you'll let me. Denise broke down, pulling them both into a fierce embrace. It wasn't an embrace that erased all the pain, but it was the first step toward healing. A few weeks later, Marcus made the decision to visit his biological family, Loretta's younger sister, Evelyn, and relatives who had never known the truth. Denise drove him there. The car quiet, but no longer filled with the tense, raw energy it once held. When they arrived at a small red brick house at the end of a quiet street, Marcus stepped out, his palms sweaty. Evelyn waited on the porch, eyes shimmering with emotion at the sight of him. She rushed forward, enveloping Marcus in a hug, whispering, "Do you know how much you look like Loretta?" Marcus crumbled into her arms, sobs breaking free. Denise stood nearby, heart aching with the thought of Loretta, gone too soon, but also warming with relief as she watched Marcus find his roots. Evelyn turned, grasping Denise's hands. "Thank you for raising Marcus to be such a kind man," she said with heartfelt sincerity. "We will be grateful to you forever." Marcus looked up at the woman who raised him, eyes glistening but finally peaceful. He knew the truth of his blood, but he also knew the bond with his mother would never fade. Denise gave a small, tearful smile, realizing her son was ready to face whatever lay ahead. That evening, when it was just Denise, Marcus, and Jasmine sitting on the porch. The Atlanta night was cool, a gentle breeze drifting through the air. They sat in quiet companionship, gazing at one another as if trying to memorize this rare, precious moment. Marcus squeezed his mother's hand. "No matter what the DNA says, you'll always be my mom. I know you love me more than anything." Jasmine rested her head on Denise's shoulder, murmuring softly, "It'll be here too, so you'll never have to feel alone again." Under the soft yellow porch light, Denise looked up at the star-studded sky, a persistent ache still lingering in her heart. How many families out there could be living a similar mistake? How many children have grown up in places they don't truly belong? Without ever knowing, the question hung in the air, a quiet, haunting echo for anyone who might hear their story, a reminder that sometimes the most painful wounds are those carved by truths forgotten or lost.